We'll certainly talk about today in just a moment. But I do want to ask you about the season itself, I guess, overall. We still got one event left to go, right? But, I mean, how would you qualify this season, the success, the highlights so far?
Yeah, John. I mean, this season with the Bellator fighters in the mix, with the top PFL fighters who returned. I mean, the fans saw the level of talent and the fights were really next level. So we couldn't have been happier with the season to date, the quality of the fights, and the new storylines, and the fighters looking to hey, we're wrapping up the playoffs here in DC. These two weight classes, they're looking to punch their ticket to the championship. And that's what it's all about.
We'll get the brackets finished up on Friday night. What can you tell us about the championship? Obviously, we look forward to the year-end event.
We can't. Well, we're going to be telling you soon where that fight's going to be hosted, and it'll be a massive, mega event. And I can tell you, it's a new location. We've never been, but more to come on those details when we'll be making that announcement.
Could you say if it's domestic or international?
No, not yet. But I will say we are global. And we're really, excited about not only staging events here in the U.S. For the global season, but expanding internationally with that product as well.
Awesome. Did want to ask you about today. Obviously, we finally got those two guys together on a stage we've been dreaming about for a long time. I guess, what was your reaction to seeing them together and just the magnitude of this fight overall?
They're monsters. I mean, these are two amazing athletes. Francis returned to MMA. It's long. It's long anticipated, and you heard from him. He wants this fight, and he's fighting with greater purpose. And Heynan, he's the real deal. I mean, 6'8". You've seen what he's done. He knows how to finish, and this is a real fight. And there's no one I've talked to, in all sports, in the combat game, everybody knows this is a real fight. And both of these fighters, they need this fight. They want the belt. It means a lot for Francis in terms of his continued journey and legacy, as the top heavyweight MMA champion in the world. And he's got some unfinished business. He's going to finish that business, or try to finish that business in this case. And this is all about the future for Heynan. Cementing his name globally as the top number one heavyweight MMA champion. So. It has all the storylines, all the drama for the fans, but these two fighters want it.
I know you've been very busy today, but speaking of storyline and drama, did you see from the press conference there was perhaps a mistranslation, or what did Heynan say or did he not say about being Francis's worst problem this year? Have you talked to him? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah. No, he's a consummate professional. You heard him. It's a proud moment for him in terms of how he feels about what he's achieved to date. And the magnitude of this fight in this moment, he's sharing, his joy, but he's a fighter, and he has something to prove, and I think that's what fans are going to see. They're going to see a next level Heynan in the cage. I mean, we've seen what he can do, but this fight is going to be completely different.
Last thing for me. The initial announcement of the fight, we saw today it's going to be in Saudi Arabia. The initial announcement of the fight didn't mention Saudi Arabia. Was there a consideration that it would be anywhere else?
No, honestly, we pulsed it out. We want to sort of get fans excited about, the top of the card, not only, Francis and Heynan, but Cyborg and Larissa. And I mean, you're talking about the left side of that card, Francis, right? The number one heavyweight in the world. You talk about Cyborg, the very best woman in the game, in terms of an icon and quote, taking on two PFL champions in those weight classes. So you see all that coming together. So, we want to announce that first, and then sort of build towards a moment like this with Jake Paul, and announce, we are bringing this fight to the fight capital of the world, Riyadh.
See right here. Pete, we did see Jake Paul briefly and got to see him talk at the press conference. Obviously, that raises questions. Where are we at of potentially seeing Jake compete for the PFL in this martial arts?
2025. You heard from Jake. He's been training. He's got the smart cage, and he's training with a lot of different athletes in MMA. And we're as excited as fans are. But Jake is definitely working to make that debut, and there are a number of MMA, top fighters who want to be part of that, and more to come on those details. But we were really happy to have Jake part of this moment, and he'll be with us tomorrow at the PFL playoff event here in DC.
The decision was made to bring out Dakota Ditcheva to showcase her a little bit at today's press conference. Obviously, look, we know she's a big star. The promotion sees a lot of potential in her. But can you just talk about, hey, how that came together to say, we want you to get a moment at our biggest press conference?
I think you said it. Dakota's a star, and she's really an example of our system at work. We signed her, say 3 years ago. She was part of the inaugural, our first international league, PFL Europe. She proved herself. She got her way, punched her ticket to that championship, won. And then we assessed that weight, not only Dakota, but we assessed that weight class, 125 women's. And then once we, acquired Bellator and the Bellator 125ers in that women division, incredible. We have the best women's 125, in the world. And to see Dakota and then now she takes her pathway up, right, to the global season, and we brought the whole weight class up. So Dakota's delivering, and she's still early in her career. She's only going to get better. But while last season was a test in PFL Europe, and she won that belt, and now she's on the global stage, and she's handling it well. And so with a moment like this, and she's training here in the U.S. now, she's at ATT, I believe. Yeah. And so she's right here. She wants to be part of everything we're doing. It made such sense to, put her on the stage with Jake and have some fun and some conversation.
And then my final question, we saw the announcement for AJ McKee versus Hughes also on the card. There are a few fighters we haven't seen since the PFL Bellator event. Are there plans to bring in some more of those guys for this second pay-per-view event?
Yeah, listen, I mean, here's the great thing is we have options now, and we talk a lot about stats and data, but, over a third of our roster overall, our fighters are, ranked in the top 25 in their weight class. And these are some of the best athletes in the world. And now we have options. We really think in the world of franchises. So, we have our pay-per-view super fights division. We have our global season, international leagues. I call it kind of that third, franchise with, extensions tied to these regional leagues. Europe up and running, PFL Middle East or PFL MENA, and then now PFL Africa coming. And then that fourth franchise is Bellator, the Champion Series. And just the notion and the idea of having a Champion Series with Bellator fighters, and we could potentially mix things up with PFL champions in the mix, and Brendan Loughnane, he's looking to get into the championship and potentially be a two-time champion. And he's told you, and he'll tell you, like many fighters, the PFL season format is the toughest test in MMA. 8 months, 4 fights to get through it, regular season, the playoff, and the championship, and to take that down. It's not easy. I mean, these fighters, they're not only taking on one another, in the cage, they're taking on the format. And it takes a different level of discipline and commitment throughout the year in training and prep, repair. And, Brendan's been through it. And, we wish him and all the fighters tomorrow night, the best. But he's an example of a fighter. We'll see how he fares through, tomorrow night and what his next stop is. But now we have another option, for Brendan as a potential. And it's a conversation with our fighters. He's just an example. Then we have the Champion Series where it's a different format. And it suits fighters, it's not, once again, that format is not for every fighter. So that gives us more options. And what that means is it gives fighters more options in different weight classes, et cetera. So, we're excited about the portfolio, as I call it.
Speaking of PFL Africa, Helios Sports and Entertainment Group, they're involved with NBA Africa out there as well. How have they expedited the growth for PFL Africa?
Yeah, well, we're just getting started. I mean, they're great. I mean, honestly, an amazing company, and tied to their vision of developing the ecosystem of sports and entertainment on the continent of Africa. They're the lead investor in NBA Africa. And so alongside development of other sports with other major leagues, MMA has so much growth around the planet, but on the continent, starting with development of athletes and that talent. And so we're with the best in class partner to launch PFL Africa next year in 2025. It's real. And at the helm, we have Francis Ngannou as our chairman. So, as we look at the journey of athletes, these African fighters will not have to go through the adversity and the challenges that Francis and other athletes in different sports in Africa had to go through. And most of them had to leave the continent of Africa to become professionals. So we're very excited and passionate about developing, athletes on the continent and launching authentic regional leagues that are based there, creating opportunity.
Right. Now you mentioned like kind of having options with, the international leagues being tournament based even throughout the regular season. When do you know when it's time to make it, maybe to where it's a full regular season for some of those international groups?
Repeat that question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So for like, let's say PFL MENA, right?
Yep.
It's a regular season and playoff. It's it's a format with the tournament.
Correct.
For the entire season. When would you feel like you're ready to move those on to like a full on regular season?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we start those with three fights, as opposed to the four, and it's perfect because it really helps develop these fighters. You throw them into 4 fights over 8 months. Establish the format, get the fighter cadence going, build up the brand and the visibility of these regional leagues. But we do have the ability to expand these regional leagues in terms of the number of events per year, and you'll see that happen, over the coming years.
Now, with having Jake Paul and Clarissa Shields, obviously the partner with his own, have you given PFL boxing any thoughts with a regular season and playoff format involving that?
We're focused on MMA, growth sport. What we know as entrepreneurs, and as it relates to this high growth venture, focus. So we're focused on this sport. We're focused on creating opportunity for athletes, expanding the content and access to great fights for fans, driving scale in this sport. That's our focus.
Peter, you had a pretty significant new hire with Zach Kinman coming on to lead the live event production. Can you talk a little bit about that and the significance of it?
Yeah, great question. I mean, Zach, and he's an exceptional producer, came from Fox Sports. He'll be working with our, live event production team. And, Zach's a producer that's produced sports from NFL to, major soccer and major, finals competition across all major sports, being a veteran of Fox Sports. And I think what it says is it speaks volumes about MMA and it speaks volumes about PFL, meaning MMA is mainstream. It is the growth sport. And not only are we attracting great talent in the cage in our league and throughout our roster, but we're attracting great talent from all of sports in every facet of it. And I think Zach represents that. He's a great producer. He's a great storyteller. And it's just, part of growing as a company where we're bringing on exceptional talent to grow the brand and grow the business. And ultimately, from Zach's chair, tell great stories. And he's a great storyteller.
A lot of fighters have kind of just spoke out about their frustrations with the tournament and the matchmaking and stuff like that. So after this season, do you guys think you'll sit down and maybe change some things to maybe make fighters more happy?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you can't make everybody happy. We have rules and regulations. That's the format. And so year over year, Ray Sefo, now Mike Hogan, and their whole team will evaluate the format, rule tweaks, et cetera. So, matchmaking is part of the regular season, but there are limited spots. At the end of the day, on within each weight class, anyone coming into the league has they have the credentials and the experience, and then the opportunity to become champion. So at the end of the day, our fighters know, despite any conversation about changes or new ideas tied to the format and scheduling and matchmaking. Once you get in, you know who you're fighting, when you're fighting, what you're fighting for. Unlike any other promotion, our fighters have the ability to really manage their career differently as professionals, and we think that beyond meritocracy, like as a real foundation of the company. So, but listen, we're always talking to our fighters. We're always listening to fans. And year over year, we're always going to try and improve how we present the product and how we stage the events, and support the athlete's journey. So we look at that stuff year over year.
And then last one for me, I don't know if you saw today, but after the presser, Chris Cyborg kind of took to social media and basically said she doesn't see the value that you guys see in Jake Paul and why you guys would even give him a microphone. Any thoughts or opinions on that?
Well, she's got to take that up with Jake. So Jake's a partner of the PFL. We're proud to have him in the mix. I mean, he's such an advocate, for combat sports, for the athletes. He's blazed his own trail, and his scorecard's pretty good. As it relates to his brand, his voice, his platform, his success, and he's going to continue to blaze that trail. And the fact that we have someone like Jake being an advocate for MMA and to promote these fighters, it's a great thing for the sport. It's great for the PFL. An event like our pay-per-view event October 19th. So Chris is entitled to her opinion, but that's our opinion.
Pete, I want to kind of springboard off of something that Cade said there. It happened a little bit ago. We heard from Don before it happened with the Gegard Mousasi situation, and now that the dust has settled, just kind of, can you explain how everything unfolded with Gegard?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to get into those specifics of mechanics with individual fighters. I mean, you can talk to Mike Hogan, you can talk to Ray Sefo, but once again, we're at the end of the day, we have over 400 fighters under contract now, and we work really hard to make sure we're fulfilling everything that we say and then some. And there's always issues to work out, just like in any partnership.
Has that been a trickier part of bringing over the Bellator guys?
Honestly, it's been pretty seamless. If you talk to some of the fighters, I think ultimately they're the ones that could give you the feedback. But I think all things considered, it's been seamless.
Peter, a couple for me. With the heavyweight fight with Renan Ferreira and Francis Ngannou, if this was made a couple of years ago, I think people would have seen it as a bit more one-sided for Francis. Do you think it's more competitive now that he hasn't been training MMA, he's been doing the boxing swing, he's coming off a pretty heavy knockout loss? Do you think it's a better fight for PFL in 2024?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly timed, as it relates to this fight. And Francis, he's a beast. He's always training, and he's in top condition. Not only from his this past year, having two major heavyweight boxing bouts, and the first one, in my opinion, he won, and the opinion of others. So he's in top condition, and MMA is his DNA. So we're not concerned about his condition. Excuse me, and we think the timing's great.
With in boxing, we hear about there's this thing called the lineal champion. Kind of, it doesn't matter who's got the belt. If you're the man, and then you beat the man, you become the man. So if Renan pulls it off against Francis Ngannou, having left UFC as the UFC champion, even though he might not have the body of work as Ngannou or Stipe Miocic or John Jones, would you regard Ferreira as the man across all?
Number one heavyweight champion in the world title. This is a belt. It's going against Francis Ngannou. So this is a new belt. This is a new day in the sport. Renan very much represents the future, and so we're bringing it. We're developing signing the best talent. Developing the best talent. Renan's an example of that. PFL's about the future.
Did you have any scouts at the Olympics at all, looking at any of the combat athletes there to kind of bring them into MMA?
Yeah, you know what? The Olympics for me, we did, had a moment about MMA is a gold medal sport or an Olympic sport. You look at many of these athletes, in MMA, they come from the Olympic disciplines. Many of our athletes actually competed, in the Olympics in various disciplines. So for me, I'm looking forward to, banging that drum that, MMA is or will, be an official Olympic sport, because these athletes deserve, that platform, globally. So that's coming. And so I think when we saw the games in Paris and all the excitement about combat sports, MMA, it's, again, talking to the future, but, the IOC is definitely looking at this sport. They're there to serve athletes around the world, and it's an underserved athlete base. It's a global sport. So, more to come, and, MMA will be an Olympic sport for sure.
I mean, did you have eyes on anyone in a singular martial art that was competing there that you think could be brought in?
Yeah, Ray Sefo and Mike Hogan, that they have their own war room on that. As we look at not only here in the U.S., we're looking at collegiate wrestlers and other spaces, but globally, to see that type of competition on display, they have some ideas.
Peter, just going back to PFL Africa, obviously it's great to hear obviously the announcement of PFL Africa next year. I was out in Nigeria a couple of months ago covering.
That was bonkers.
Yeah, indeed. And I was out there covering Kamaru Usman's show, the AKO show, and it's great to see not only the talent that is increasing, but also the infrastructure as well. Have you put much thought into where the first location in Africa will be for the PFL?
Yeah, tournament? Great question. No, we're in the planning stage right now. What I can tell you, we will stage events, or at least one of the events in Nigeria. We're having conversation, obviously, with Francis about an event in Cameroon, and then, conversations with Rwanda and other sort of countries. But there's so much excitement, about the launch of PFL Africa throughout the continent. And, South Africa will also play a role, in other parts of it. And it's not just about 2025. It's about, listen, over the next 3 years, how are we plotting this out to develop that talent, stage those events, grow the sport, develop more interest among the African fan base, and then develop future, champions right there on the continent. So, and Francis, I mean, I was with Francis in the green room before he went out. All he wanted to talk about was PFL Africa, and I have a to-do list. So that's all I know.
Nice. And then the last one from me. Obviously, you spoke about the league format and how it's unique to MMA and it's unique, obviously, to PFL. It's hard, obviously, on the fighters as well. Have you taken much thought into having certain conversation with certain fighters that you want to keep longevity of, to maybe persuade them away from doing another tournament and maybe go towards SPF?
And we touched on it earlier. I mean, once again, we have pay-per-view cards, showcase fights on those cards. We have our global season product. And if you're not in the global season, we still have an opportunity to showcase fighters, to develop them, give them great fights, add to the card, etc. Same thing with our international leagues. So we're not just limited to a season format. Even on the global season product, as well as the international leagues, we have showcase fights. But then once again, we have Bellator, and that just gives us a lot of room to expand weight classes and present different fights.
Thanks.
Perfect. A few from me. Francis Ngannou, obviously fantastic to have him here, and there's a lot of conversation right now over who the best heavyweight in the world is. But looking at the broader picture, if he was to beat Pereira and win a second world championship, would that put him in the conversation for the greatest of all time in the heavyweight?
He's absolutely in the greatest of all time conversation today, period. And, the conversation when he entered into the ring with two of the, greatest boxers, today, and they would tell you, he is the baddest man on the planet, combat sports athlete and fighter on the planet. What he proved, and what he's done in the cage over his career. So he's already there. He has more to prove, and he's fighting for more purpose right now.
I mean, he hits so hard, obviously, but so does Ferreira. You've got two massive punches in there. We all saw what Ferreira did to Ryan Bader. So in terms of punching power, do you think they're comparable? Do you think they hit pretty much the same, or is one potentially harder?
Yeah, we're going to do a test before this fight, so we'll share some of that data.
And now looking at Jake Paul, he's obviously going to be doing big things in the PFL, we hope. Is there any opponents in mind that you potentially like to get him in with?
Listen, the Diaz conversation's fun. I mean, hey, they mixed it up already, and I think that's a possibility. But there are several others that are definitely in the mix, and we'll be sharing those details with Jake, at the appropriate time.
And he's been beating MMA fighters in the boxing ring. Would you be interested in doing it the other way around, having him fight a boxer in the PFL cage?
Yeah, listen, like that is, as you know, that's just a tough transition. And so, we have Clarissa Shields who made that, transition, and Savannah Marshall, in our women's division, and others. But, it could be interesting just given, Jake's experience, in MMA, and other fighters' experience in MMA. But I do think Jake is more set on fighting a fighter with significant experience in the sport, and I think that's what fans want.
So sorry, we got to get one more question, Jose, and then we got to get to the weigh-in show.
Pete, I know we're trying to get through 2024, but for 2025, any talk about expanding the regular season by adding a couple extra weight classes?
Yeah, no, listen, women's 125 came up, so we're excited about that. We're going to continue there, and more to come on expansion. But our real focus is big tentpole events, pay-per-view, more to come there, not just what's happening October 19, and then continued international league expansion. We talked about PFL Africa. There are other markets that we will be rolling out, from PFL Australia to PFL Latam, PFL Asia. We're in planning mode to develop and roll those out in conjunction with the other 3 international leagues. And you'll be hearing more about the Champions League of MMA. And that's what we're building.
Can we expect the Challenger Series to return?
Love the Challenger Series. I mean, I saw Impa here. I mean, that Impa fight last week was really epic, and his journey coming from and through the Challenger Series, getting a contract with us, getting into the season last year, becoming champion, and now you see him on a run this year. He's a product of that franchise, so we're really proud of it. It has a role, and we're in the process of talking about how we reimagine it, not just here in the U.S., but internationally.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Awesome. Enjoy DC. And tomorrow.